A lonely old man sits on the side of a busy market street. People walk past him, some mock him, others ignore him. A rich young man in a suit stands far away, watching, closing parenthesis. In a world where love is measured by wealth and kindness is often just a show, one old man decided to test the heart of a woman not for himself, but for his son. But what he uncovered changed everything. He wasn't a beggar, he was a billionaire in disguise. Searching for something money couldn't buy true love for his son. In the heart of the city, surrounded by iron gates and tall hedges, stood the mansion of Mr. Edward Mukozi, widowed billionaire in his late 70s. He lived with his only son, Daniel, a 28-year-old kind-hearted man who had never truly known struggle. Daniel had everything: money, cars, and prestige. But something was missing: love. He had been betrayed before. Women loved his name, his wealth, his status, but not his soul. One night, Edward sat by the fireplace, watching his son stare blankly at a framed photo of his late mother. "Daniel," Edward said softly, "you're young, and you deserve to be loved. But not by someone who only sees your bank account." Daniel nodded but didn't speak. His heart had been bruised too many times. That night, Edward made a decision that would change both their lives. Edward met with his loyal butler, Thomas, at dawn. "I want to find a woman who will love my son for who he is, not what he has," Edward whispered. "And to do that, I must become someone else." Within a week, Edward had disappeared from public life. The news outlets claimed he had gone abroad for medical treatment, but, in truth, he had moved into an abandoned shack in a poor district with nothing but a walking stick, ragged clothes, and a secret. He became Old Man Nuru, a nameless beggar in the streets of Kasaiwa Market. Amina was a young woman who worked at a fruit stand. She wasn't rich, but she was honest, hardworking, and always smiling. While other vendors mocked Old Man Nuru, she always gave him leftover fruits. Sometimes, even half her lunch. "You remind me of my father," she once said, placing warm bread in his hand. "He passed away 2 years ago. But he taught me. Always help those in need." Edward noticed her kindness. Day after day, he watched her, but he needed to be sure. Would she treat Daniel the same, without knowing who he was? One weekend, Daniel dressed plainly, without his usual entourage, walked through Kasaiwa Market, pretending to be a struggling mechanic looking for a part-time job. He approached Amina's stall to ask about work. "You can help me carry boxes from the truck," she smiled. "But I don't pay much." Daniel accepted. For weeks, he worked beside her, lifting, sorting, laughing. She never asked about his past. She only cared about who he was now. They began to bond. Slowly, love bloomed. Meanwhile, Old Man Nuru watched from a distance, hopeful, but cautious. One rainy evening, Edward collapsed in the street. Cold, soaked, shivering. Most people walked past him, but Amina came running. She wrapped him in her scarf and helped him sit beneath her fruit stall. "Don't worry, old man," she whispered. "I'll get you warm tea." She left her shop unattended in a busy market just to care for a beggar. Edward wept. "You have a good heart," he said. "Not many would do this." She smiled. "Kindness isn't a favor, it's a responsibility." That night, Edward knew she was the one. A week later, Daniel invited Amina for lunch at a quiet restaurant. There, Edward walked in clean-shaven, dressed in a sleek black suit, looking nothing like Old Man Nuru. Amina's eyes widened. "That's the beggar." But Daniel stood and smiled. "Amina, meet my father, Mr. Edward Muk." She was speechless. "It was a test," Edward said gently. "And you passed in a way that touched my heart. You showed kindness to a man with nothing, and love to my son, when he was no one." Tears streamed down her face. "I didn't love him for his money," she said. "I loved him because he was kind, and honest, and made me laugh when I was tired." Edward placed a small velvet box on the table. "Then allow me to welcome you into our family, Amina." Inside was a golden ring, and beside it, a key to the mansion, your new home. They married under the baobab tree where Amina used to sit with her father. It wasn't flashy, just family, close friends, and the people of Kasaiwa Market, who now looked at Amina with awe, but the most special guest. The fruit vendor across the street, who once mocked Edward, now standing silently. Ashamed, Edward forgave him. Judgment is easy, he said. But love, that takes strength. Years passed. Edward passed peacefully in his sleep, surrounded by his grandchildren and the woman he once tested. On his grave, they carved, he gave up everything to teach his son the value of what truly matters. Daniel and Amina built a shelter for the homeless in Kasaiwa, named Nuru's house, after the identity Edward once wore. They visited it often not to boast, but to remember that sometimes the richest hearts come dressed in rags. In the end, it wasn't the gold, or the mansion, or the name that found Daniel true love. It was a father's sacrifice, and a young woman's kindness. Never judge love by appearance, because the one who ignores a beggar may never be ready to marry a king.